Tony, thank you very much for joining us. And we have quite a few people in our who have tuned in to the webinar. We have about 14 people tuned into the webinar this evening. So this is a hot button issue, even though we just decided on this morning. And of course, a very good evening to all who have joined us on our Facebook live stream as well, because we have quite a few people who have joined us online on Facebook. So over to you, Tony, to look at what specifically is this arrangement between Petrojam and Paria. And I know you're up to date with what Petrojam, there was a very interesting article that you shared, and the person apparently who did the study about Petrojam's refinery, one Christopher Zaka. I know the Zaka family well because I was born and grew up in Jamaica. So I'm sure I know Christopher Zaka, younger than me, but I'm sure I know him, and his father became a judge in Jamaica and so on. And they have connections with St. Mary and Highgate, where I grew up for many years. So that was an interesting name that came across. So go ahead, Tony. Tell us about this arrangement.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Thanks for inviting me. You know, I don't like to get into conversations that put me in confrontation with ministers, because they tend to be that not a receiving kind of attitude, but a defensive kind of attitude when you try to get solutions or offer suggestions. And it also caused me to have to listen to the speech of the minister, and I try to avoid that, because I find quite often ministers in this country and politicians generally tend to come across as angry, often disrespectful of the public and media, and sometimes bombastic. They are superfluous in words, but quite stingy on facts. So when I listen to these speeches and these presentations, what I listen for is what they don't say, and that can be quite informative. So one of the things I want to say is that I agree with the minister and Minister Vaz in Jamaica that there is merit in Petrojam and Paria collaborating on the trading of fuels. Now, where things get murky is that people are saying or thinking that Trinidad Paria is buying product from Petrojam and extrapolating that to say from Petrojam's refinery. The truth is, Petrojam's refinery is not very efficient and has been declining in production for many, many years. Nameplate capacity is 36,000 barrels a day throughput. It's down to maybe just over 20,000 barrels a day. It's been declining progressively. In terms of fuel oil, typically at best operation, it might produce 45% of that throughput into fuel oil. So the last numbers I have was Jamaica was producing about 9,000 barrels per day of heavy fuel oil. Now, Jamaica's demand for heavy fuel oil is about 15,000 barrels a day. So clearly, Jamaica is importing heavy fuel oil to meet its own needs. So what that tells me is that what Petrojam and Paria are collaborating on is a trading arrangement where they are buying from some seller and using the infrastructure, the location to advantage. But that makes sense. If you want to get involved in trading, you have to have one or more of a few things. You must have a demand or a supply if you're selling. You must have storage. You must have the ability to finance it efficiently. You must have a good credit rating, for instance. And you must have the ability to manage risk. Now, the challenge the Caribbean has faced for a long time is that all the markets are quite small. And therefore, their storage terminals can only accommodate small volumes. So therefore, it requires small ships to carry it. Small ships over long distances aren't efficient. Big ships coming to small ports isn't efficient either. So what this suggests to me is that Jamaica is probably bringing fuel from the United States or some of its suppliers in Central America that I usually buy from, and then selling that to Trinidad using small ships. 50,000 barrels a day or a cargo is a small cargo, and not efficient to bring those. So it brings into question, if there's a collaboration, who's bringing what assets or what capability to the dance? So the question is, who has the best storage, the best location, the best credit rating, and the best ability to manage risk? And it seems from this arrangement that Paria and Petrotrin and Petrojam have determined Petrojam is the better party. Now, that is on the outset, and that is giving, as far as I can tell, the best look to it. And it may make sense. I don't know from the economics. Now, the reality is that Petrojam and Paria both procure largely through the same trader. And that trader has been involved in some high-profile corruption cases to the point they were just last week. The highest Swiss criminal court found them guilty of corruption and levied substantial fines and jail time on executives and traders. So it really calls for some more transparency to ensure the populations of both Venezuela and Trinidad that, for instance, Petrojam is not being used as a third party to create an arm's length perception. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm saying that's out there. And if you want to be clear to the public, you must be clear that the deal is arm's length. Now, who they're buying from, we don't know. So Jamaica's demand for heavy fuel oil has been declining because they're importing a lot of LNG for power. And that too is a deal that needs some discussion. I really calls into question the negotiation capacity in Jamaica. And that means that they have less demand. So therefore their contracts may suggest they have excess supply. I don't know. So it may be a combination of those things that comes to mind. So that to me would suggest that there might be an underlying rationale for the collaboration. What worries me, and I guess worries others, is why and how. Why did this happen this way? Why, for instance, are we looking at getting more use of the facilities in Paria, in Point-of-Peer, the storage capacity, for instance, the fact that we have large terminals. Now, it may make sense to have only small cargoes. Why? Because that cargo goes into inventory. That's a cash tied up. So you don't want to have large volumes sitting in tanks that you can't dispose of. So managing that is part of the risk management portfolio of any refinery manager, any trading team. So those are the things that come to mind. Now, one question that worries me is Paria, like any state company, falls under the remit of the procurement regulations. Was this process of procurement undertaken under that remit? In other words, did it follow the guidelines of the procurement regulations? Or is this somehow exempt from that? It's a major procurement. It's $50-60 million, depending on which number you go by. It's quite a large procurement. So I would say those are the things that come to mind initially, David. The thing that worries me sometimes is that when government ministers speak about these things and they speak about confidential negotiations. And that's almost as the police saying this is a gang-related murder. In other words, you'll hear nothing more about this. And and you have to question why it's confidential or what aspects of it are confidential or not. And that blanket statement makes us believe that, one, they're doing good business, they know what they're doing, and we don't need to know or can't know. And I don't accept that, because I know, for instance, that the laws of Trinidad and Tobago provide for a great degree of transparency. I know also that the ministers break the very laws they've sworn an oath to uphold, including some laws on transparency. So, so I don't always take that for granted. Like I said, I don't listen for what I hear, I listen for what I don't hear. And that's the background, David, to the deal as I see it. Now, one of the things that comes to my mind always is when people start talking about Petrotrin Refinery being shut down because it's uneconomic. And that kind of gets thrown in there every time a deal is made.
Yeah. Before you go to the Petrotrin Refinery, there are a couple of points coming back to the Petrojam Refinery in Jamaica, and you're making a very important point about the nameplate capacity, throughput capacity of the refinery, which is about 36,000 barrels a day, but which is not actually, it can't run at that because the plant is old. We've seen reports coming out of Jamaica that refinery is an old refinery, and that it does not in fact produce ultra low sulfur diesel. Now, the minister in his statement said that the fuel that was being obtained from Petrojam by Paria will be primarily ultra low sulfur diesel, which will be used to fuel ships, what bunker fuel, what is popularly known as bunker fuel. And therefore, what Paria was going to engage in is bunkering operations, ships that come into Pointe-à-Pierre, or maybe ships that go down to Point Fortin, the LNG ships and so on, and other ships that may be going into Port of Spain and into Point Lisas will be refueled with this ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. But Petrojam doesn't produce it because the Petrojam company was looking at the possibility of upgrading the refinery, one, to expand the throughput, and two, to produce products like ultra-low sulfur diesel. But it seems from the reports coming out of Jamaica that it does not now produce ultra-low sulfur diesel, which reinforces your point that Petrojam is going to buy that fuel from somebody else and then sell it to Paria, who then sell it to the end users. Am I right on that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the Jamaican Energy Minister said exactly that. He said we were importing marine fuel before, but buying it from international suppliers. And that is the fact. There's no denying that's what they're doing. So this is a trading game where somebody is importing and reselling. Now, both parties see this as beneficial. Jamaica is saying that when we sell this, we'll get foreign exchange. We'll earn current foreign exchange. Trinidad is saying we will help our neighbors and we will buy locally. But Trinidad is paying a premium, potentially. Now, that premium, you must pay Petrojam a profit margin. That premium may or may not be offset by any savings made in shipping costs. So I'm not sure if it does or not. I haven't got the numbers on what it costs to ship from Venezuela to Jamaica and then from Jamaica to Trinidad. But there may be offsets there. There may also be some deal that Petrojam and Paria went into with the supplier and said we would increase our demand, ergo we want a better price.
Right.
So there may be negotiations going on to give us that. Now, to be honest, I don't have real confidence in the negotiation capacity of those in charge of our negotiation to our gas and oil and gas industry. Despite what we said, from what I've seen, I will have my doubts, my reservations.
Yeah. And of course, the importation of bitumen. And there was this comment by the general manager of Petrojam in the Jamaican press that it's ironic that Jamaica doesn't produce a drop of oil, but yet it is selling both fuel oil to Trinidad, bunker fuel, as well as bitumen. And Trinidad is an oil producer and had a refinery. So, he was kind of...
Has an asphalt lake.
Yeah, he has a pitch lake, yes. So he was showing some good... more than pecan at Trinidad and Tobago, and saying, well, we better than you kind of thing, because you have the natural resource, you had a refinery, but, we are supplying you kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting. And it's the thing about foreign exchange, because Paria was consistently having to get foreign exchange from the central bank in order to pay for the purchase of fuel and bitumen for the Trinidad and Tobago market. And that is, I have my budget documents in front of me. Sorry, I didn't pull out that particular one. Maybe before we close, I could pull it out. But there is in the review of the economy data on allocation of foreign exchange in general terms, not which companies get and so on. And it is significant that energy companies now are consuming foreign exchange, and that has to be Paria. So one of the problems of access to foreign exchange in the country is the fact that Paria is having to access foreign exchange in order to buy fuel for the domestic market and for whatever it is selling abroad.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I was making the point, and I think you want to get into the refinery aspect of it. But one of the points I was making that is related to the trading is that when the refinery was said to be losing money, everybody pointed fingers as the operations, meaning the laborers and the union, right? The truth of the matter is a lot of loss, a lot of leakage of value was created by the way Petrotrin did their trading. Now, Petrotrin was buying crude from the Urals in Russia and Gabon in West Africa, when they could have got the same or similar quality crude right next door in Venezuela and saved tons of money on shipping. Those two suppliers are notoriously corrupt in their dealings. Now, the best explanation I got, and it was a fair explanation, but it tells us a really bad story, was that because Petrotrin had done such a bad job at maintaining the integrity of their tanks, they could not import cheap crude that they could blend to get the right quality to put into the refinery. They could only import crude that will go straight into the refinery. Now, any refinery worth its salt makes money by importing cheap product and selling expensive product. And they do that by blending. And the fact that Petrotrin couldn't maintain their tanks or upgrade them to improve the efficiency or the profitability of the refineries tells me that somebody wasn't interested in the refinery making money. So all the work that was done by all these studies, has anybody pointed out to the losses due on trading and the comparative value of the products, the crude we bought against shipment crude coming from an error market? So I wanted to make that point that Petrotrin has had a problem with trading. We haven't been told anything different to make us believe that Paria's trading is any more transparent or efficient. And that to me is a big question we need to ask. How can we be satisfied that we can trust Paria's trading capability? It's not that I don't trust the people, but as a citizen, I want to be able to validate that what they're doing is in my best interest.